All right, we are live. How's everybody doing?
Doing well.
Good. So I'll do my status. I did the second training last week. It went really well. Found a few bugs that I think Matthew is taking care of for me, which is really nice of him. With the Place My Order app not looking and working right on mobile. But other than that, it went really much more smoothly. The internet connection speed was better, which I think had a big, uh, uh, was a big influencing factor. The and I had my last night. I spoke at JavaScript Chicago and talked about server-side rendering. It did not go great. I think mostly because my explanation for what server-side rendering was, people did not understand. I think it went okay, but I think it went okay for like one person in the room who knew what I was talking about, and I didn't do a good enough job demoing server-side rendering. I don't know if that was your experience, Matthew, but a lot of people were
No.
like, "Well, what is server-side rendering?" And then I was like, "Any questions?" Halfway through my talk or quarter way through my talk, and people were like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Oh, server-side rendering," and then I tried to explain it, and they just did not understand what I was talking about.
Yeah, mine was at a developer conference, so it was a different audience, I guess, is maybe why. But some people didn't understand like the CSS part because that's kind of the hardest part I think to understand. But everyone understood most everything, I think.
Mm, yeah, I tried to explain server-side rendering conceptually. People were like, "Isn't that just what normal servers do?" And I was like, "No."
Yeah.
Imagine you wrote your whole. Have you ever written a single-page JavaScript app? No. What is a single-page JavaScript app?
Mm.
Okay. Uh,
Yeah, it's audience
Wait,
thing.
that
is
was a
building.
JavaScript meetup though, right?
It is the JavaScript meetup.
So
Uh,
what are hmm,
it was hard. I mean,
interesting.
it was. I think we got sidetracked a little bit there, but then I was like, "Has anybody done server-side rendering here?" And only one person raised his hand, a guy from Raise, which is ironic.
Now
Um,
we talk about server-side rendering in the DoneJS talk too, a little bit, and I don't remember that being an issue there for me.
I don't know. There was a I think there was a lot of people who came to this meetup. I mean, there was like 160 registered. I'd say maybe like 85 people came.
Mm.
And I had someone being like, "Well, why do you need any of that? Can't you just have your app be a promise and then return a promise?" And I was just like, "Well, I don't know how to start pulling that
Yeah.
apart and getting what you mean there." So it was an interesting. I think maybe the audience I think was probably, or at least the people asking me these questions were very inexperienced. Um, I think I did get a lot of questions. I mean, I got a bazillion questions. It was just that some of the questions were, you know, like, "Oh, well, how do you?" One person actually asked, like, how do you deal with progressive loading?" And I was like, "But I just talked about that." Like, so it was partially me, I'm sure, because I actually didn't get a chance to practice it. But I do want to at least show an example of what the presentation ended up looking like, just so in case any. Well, we getting too recursive. Um, just because I think it's useful to talk about. Um, Essentially, my goal was, in short, was to explain the benefits of server-side rendering. So I explained the timeline thing that I already do from the DoneJS talk. And say, there's traditionally two different ways of doing server-side rendering. You just duplicate all your code and write the same thing on the back end, and or you use a headless browser. And then there's kind of two newer ways, I would say, which is how React does it, which I called single context template rendering, and how CanSSR does it with single context virtual DOM. Um, Now that you're here, Matthew, there's, I guess, some other things I really want to show you real quick. So I talked about how it's really a battle between maintainability and performance for the most part. And then I walked people through how server-side rendering works, just normal, like traditional, you're just building a server-side application with PHP, to try to explain how, sometimes your app code is loaded every time with every request, and that can be a good or a bad thing depending on how careful developers you have. And then showed this doesn't happen with Node is kind of a way to introduce just the kind of performance diagrams that I'm trying to show, and then talk about what this does with a dummy Phantom.js. If you're using Phantom.js to do server-side rendering, gave some pseudocode for what Phantom.js application would look like, just where you'd have to tell everything when it's starting, when there's asynchronous behavior, how you get it back and get the outer HTML. Then I talk about what it looks like in React, the same app in React, and how about basically React is kind of creating a maintainability issue where every class, every sub-module has to be formatted in this very particular way, have a get data interface, and then you need to be able to go and get all of those classes from the URL, which is kind of, basically creating routing rules in two different places and an interface that doesn't belong. But then I talked about how you do get nice throughput with React, because it basically works data-wise and control flow. It kind of looks very similar to how normal apps work, where you get all your data first, and then you render some template. Then I talked about how to set this up with like can simple down, but I left a bug in it, and this isn't exactly how it looks like, but I wanted to show. Matthew, do you see the bug?
In the left side?
Hmm?
On the left side?
No, on the, it's actually in here. Ish. The problem, and with this, the problem would be that document wouldn't be the same document if you had multiple requests going at the same time. Because we're not setting the global, like, if you had two requests coming at the same time, the second document would be the document for when this first one would be trying to update the document. Because we can't wait to update the document, right? I try to use that just as an example to show like kind of the problems with having to update the state. And then I showed like a fix, which can wait doesn't support, but I think it should, which is we need some easy way just to say, easier than the intercepts that are there now, just to say, hey, put these things on a global state. So that was one suggestion I had. And then the other suggestion that I had is, so I showed how React puts data back on the client. So any AJAX requests that are going off, how that's embedded in the response HTML. And I try to show, I made up a new API for how, for what it could look like for maybe can wait to do this. Because the big thing is that the requests, the responses that you get back here now, you don't know what requests made those. You just get a bunch of responses.
Mm-hmm.
So
wait. You do know. What do you mean? What request made it? What do you mean by that?
Well, what URL was made, what the parameters on the XHR object were.
Yeah, wait just returns an array of whatever was pushed in.
It returns an array of all the responses, I thought, the response data from the requests.
Well, more generally, that's because can connect pushes those. That's what can connect pushes into can wait. The can wait has an API that says, "Give me some data," and it just pushes those into a giant array. So Can Connect could implement it differently to change to give you something different.
Well, one thing I was just thinking is we could make, because we already have the capability of overwriting the XHR object, which is how data is going to be retrieved 99% of the time, is we could just have a capture module that you call. I forgot to put in the actual call to it. Once you want to capture all future XHR requests. And what this would do would overwrite the XHR object, and then this would give you back those XHRs with the response data on them and the requests, because you could then do xhr.url and request headers, response headers. You would actually get those XHR instances that were used, and we could make a helper function that would just take them and two-inline string them. And the nice thing about this is that when your app ran in the client, it would know about all of these XHRs because they were inlined in the page, and then we do the the caching inline cache on XHR objects instead of can connects, instead of doing it on can connect, if that makes sense. And then it would work for any app, huh?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Have to think to talk more about it, and we haven't really had time for it now. But I want to keep that generic so that it's not just capturing. It's not just XHR. So I don't know. I have to think about how to do that. Oh, right now it's an array. I'd rather it be like an object maybe.
Yeah, that's what
types or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think there should be a way to easily make it like embeddable and then recapturable without having like can connect do all of its weirdness. But we can talk about it more later. And then the last thing I was just introducing as a concept is the problem of having to get progressive loading. But I didn't get to the end of actually describing how DoneJS does it. So I think there's some more work here. But what I want to do next week, Matthew, is probably work on making this like the real, like the blog article. So
okay.
that's my status.
You're gonna do a blog article?
Huh?
You're gonna do a blog article about this?
We will.
Okay. Ours are very different though.
We'll have to figure out what we want the purpose of it to be, and then we'll work it out. I think we just have a blog article just showing how awesome this is.
Okay.
So I think you tend to write a little bit more like not as a marketeer, but I think that's what is needed here.
I didn't hear what you said at all.
Oh, I meant like you tend to not like you tend to use less kind of marketing style language, and it's more like straightforward. Like here's how it works. There, I'm done. But I think the technology is really cool, and it would undersell it if it wasn't promotional a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Agree with that.
All right, cool. All right, so that's it for me. Who wants to go next?
I can go. I'm giving DoneJS talk in Indianapolis in a few hours, so I'm going to drive there here soonish to beat traffic. I have done most of those bugs in that the iOS place my order thing responsiveness. I changed like 2 CSS things and it's functional now. Like you can see everything on the page. It looks fine. It's not pretty by any stretch, but it's decent. So we can go prettier if you want, or we can leave it at that. I posted a screenshot in the issue.
Yeah, it looked fine.
Okay. I think I fixed the other issues. I don't remember what they are. Oh yeah, the not hitting the API in the apps, not being able to post. That was just forgetting the www. Yeah, then I've been working on progressively loaded package.jsons in Steel. Is the current thing I'm working on.
Cool. Awesome. Sean, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I can go next. So, so I was looking into issue number 962, which is about removing the deprecated APIs. So I started creating separate issues for all the issues that we have as part of this umbrella issue. I created issue number 2217, which is about deprecation of can view mustache and can view EJS. I had some confusion here, Justin. So I had actually tagged you and asked you for some clarification here. So if you get a chance, could you take a look at?
Yeah. So I would not worry about EJS and mustache, mostly because Ryan was going to start working on that. He's not here right now because Brian brought him onto another project. But he'll probably, he was just about to do it because we were going to update, there's the old embeddedjs.com website. So he was going to pull out our EJS and mustache and then revamp that website. So I would move on to a different 2 or a different 3.0 deprecation and moving the code out. Any of the other ones, and this is actually one of the more complex ones. Any of the other ones will be easier, and there won't be anybody else working on those.
Okay. Okay. So the other one which I have is 2218, which is about deprecation of can-dot models functions.
Yeah.
So you think is that something that I can look into?
Yes, that should be. They're already deprecated, and
Okay.
the methods need to exist, but I think that they can be made. Like, I think we just need to hide them from the documentation because I think they still need to exist. And in general, can model should be removed entirely from CanJS in minor. So really what you could do, which would be better, which would be to create can-model repo, and I can create that for you. You might have admin access, but if not, I think I gave it to you, but if not, just ping me or ping anybody, David or Matthew, and we can create the can model repo for you and just move that code into can model. Or move the old can model code into that repo and remove it from that minor branch. Let's just schedule a meeting to work together.
So that won't be can connect yet?
Can connect will not be, I don't know if it'll be in 3.0.
Okay.
I don't know. We kind of have to think about this. Like, what do we go full, like, I kind of view it as like a more of I don't want 3.0 to like change everything because I want to release it faster. And I would rather say, hey, for 3.0, for I don't know. I'm not actually sure. Do we pull in can connect automatically? I don't know. Or do we? I don't know. I don't know what we do. But I know can model doesn't belong in there for sure because it's replaced by can connect. The question is just, do we have can connect as part of when you download CanJS? Does that come in?
Well, what do you mean by when you download when you implement? Because there's a lot of ways to install CanJS, right? That's probably the tricky part.
It is. So what is the core model? What do we say is core, right? Even if you npm install CanJS and you require can or import can, you get can's core right now, which is routing model. It's also what's in the default download, where it's just can.jQuery.js, right? Because
you get model now?
Huh?
You get model now?
Yeah, you get model now.
And you get mustache. That's a good question. I don't know.
Oh, most other frameworks, I don't think actually provide a model. Like React doesn't provide a model. I think Angular has like something model-ish, but nothing like on the sophistication of can connect.
Yeah,
Now,
I'd say, go ahead.
I don't know. Like we could bring in supermap, right, or some subset of supermap, and just the connection thing. We could do that, but I don't know. Part of me feels like we make core can doesn't have a model. But then the guides are going to be a little weird because it's going to be like, well, you want to load data. Is any example? I don't know. I really don't know what to.
I would say, yeah, I think just compute, map, list, stash. Like, what's the minimum you need to build a
component? I think
or a component too. I guess.
Route, probably. Yeah, I don't know. But no matter what, I think model is gone. Model's definitely gone. Connect in the core download. I think no. I think we say here's core CanJS, which is the observable stuff, and it's basically the observables plus the views and everything that is the combination of both, which is components. Components and view bindings and stuff like that, and maybe route, probably route. And then we say, oh, well, here's the other two most common, like here for model layer, you're going to use can connect, and for simulating, you're going to use can fixture. And when people are setting up their example app in the guide, it's like those three parts. And we teach can fixture because it is really part of CanJS. It's just not its core. I don't know. If anybody has thoughts on that, a better idea or a different one. So, anyways, I guess to move on, Prashant, we'll move can model into its own repo in 3.0, and that would be helpful. And then probably getting a deprecation notice saying once it's there, we'll want to add a deprecation notice to existing CanJS and say, hey, this is deprecated in the next version. If you want it, you can download can model, here, or you can use can connect, which is here, which is kind of the future, and that would be.
Okay. So just to rephrase what I understood. So you want me to create a new repository, move can.model to that repository, and then add a deprecation warning in this code base, right?
In master, saying.
In master.
Saying yes. Once you have can model working and there's like a download there or it's sent to dist, and I can show you how to do that. Once that's working, yes, we'll put up a warning message for people to say, well, you can use this, in 3.0 you'll have to use this here because it won't be part of core, and in or in 3.0 it will. Yeah, in 3.0 you'll have to go here. Basically warning people of that. And switch to can connect.
Okay, sure. I'll do that. Yeah.
Awesome. And just set up a meeting time with me, and I can help you with all of this. It'll be easier that way, I think.
Sure, I'll set up a meeting.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you.
All right, awesome. David, you want to go next?
Yeah, last week I did 2 meetups. I also worked with Julian on the Vagrant VM. There's still some issues with that, so we've been talking a little bit about that. Hopefully I'll have some time to look into that. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm thinking it maybe have something to do with Linux. And then I fixed a couple guide things last week. Also added that Travis encryption module that's node-based now. We couldn't do it through the UI. We had the discussion on the repo on the issue. We couldn't do it through the UI because you can't encrypt Heroku API keys So I found that tool that I submitted a pull request for because it didn't let you add specific things to the Travis YAML file. So they made a new release that was pretty quick, and I think now we can use all of the guide without Ruby, which is kind of nice. And right now I'm working on 2 CanJS issues, which I'm not that happy with. So we have to probably sync up after the training and look at what we can do for those. Before we go into the weeds here, I don't think anybody will be able to follow.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do the training today.
Who's doing the training?
No, there's no training. I'm canceling it just because I'm too busy with GitHub today.
Okay. Well, let me know when you have an hour or something that we can look at it.
Yeah.
Because the one was easy. I gotta get the pull request up for that, but the other one is kind of tricky. Just I don't know how to get the order right. So
okay.
Yeah, if you can look at that.
Talk about it. Cool. All right, James.
I'm still just working on the room planner app. Last week I was on vacation. This week I'm going to be finishing the initial everythingness, and then we're going to do a code review and try to get some articles written about that.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's the plan.
Sweet. Thanks, James.
Yep.
Chris?
Yeah, let me share my screen here. Show you guys a couple things. Last week, I went to a JavaScript meetup in Charlotte. I gave my presentation on CanDerive, which went really well. Didn't really have the turnout I was expecting, but the people that did come were extra engaged, so that kind of made up for it. I worked on my presentation that I gave on JSConf, and I kind of modified it a bit to be better after some feedback I got last time. This is it. I've got a link in the actual DoneJS contributor thread. But the high level is I show some models of changes being made to state and how they're applied to the DOM, and kind of keep track of the cost of those changes. And then I show some neat graphs comparing one approach to the other. You know, if we had ignored change and just replaced the entire DOM, or use a virtual DOM diffing approach, and then lastly how the approaches compare to CanDerive. Showed some demos, showed how CanDerive works, and people were pretty impressed, so that was cool. I've also been working on an article to release to the public about CanDerive. Put together a nice little outline here. Justin helped me with that. And then I've also been working on the article itself, a rough draft currently. I'm going to go through a little example app, how virtual DOM diffing kind of works with that example app, how CanDerive accomplishes the same thing with that example app, and then it kind of compares the performance of the two, so you can kind of get a feel for why one is significantly better than the other. So this week I'll be working on the rest of this article, and that should be it. Hopefully we can release next week. Publish the article next week, and that would be great. Then we can move on to, I also worked on some issues. I fixed a documentation problem. I looked into a sort plugin issue, but ultimately that's just kind of filler stuff while I'm working on the bigger picture article right now. Getting closer.
Cool. You think any of that article would be better if you had like little GIFs?
You know, I really thought about that probably like 2 hours ago. I was like, man, these images are great, but
you kind of want them animated.
Yeah, and that was kind of one of the cool things about the presentation. You know, I'm using slides, so I could just kind of control the speed and kind of create my own little slow-mo GIF. And people seems like really kind of get on board with that quick. So I was started flying through the transitions. And I'm trying to summarize that, but I wonder if I'm just doing myself a disservice. You're right. It might be a little better if we do the GIF. That said, I don't know how I would go about it. I could do it really cheaply by kind of like doing a screen recording of me navigating the presentation.
Did you
But,
write your what did you write your presentation in?
I do a
Keynote?
keynote.
Oh, Keynote actually you can export to a video.
That's cool.
So if you have animations written in Keynote, you can actually just export that, and yeah, I've done that before. I've exported it, and then you use Final Cut Pro or something else to like slow it down or speed it up if you need like pauses, because it just does a second between every animation. So
Right.
sometimes you want more or less time,
Sure.
but that works pretty well.
Yeah, I'll totally look into that. I would love to be able to show those transitions more clearly.
Yeah, cool. All right, awesome. Anything else from anybody?
Not me.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. Prashant, let me know when there's a time. Just send me like an invite, and we'll meet, and I'll help you get started with all this stuff.
Sure, I'll do that.
Awesome. All right, and David, you want to just talk right now about those bugs? You're muted. Everybody else will see you later.
Let's say he does.
I think you could just assume yes, so he'll be on board with that.
All right.